Like Ganguly, who just shows his passion, flipping, tearing off his shirt at the moment of a great victory. You've got someone like Kohli, who's personally engaged in every moment of the team that he leads, who's running around every corner, taking every catch, exhorting every bowler, clapping his hands after every ball, just so completely, totally engaged. There's no doubt that he is the animating spirit of the team.
This is nice. है ना? हाँ?
एग्जीबिशन हॉल सेम साइज है।
एक फोटो लेते हैं अंदर।
इसके अंदर अलग है।
Think tank.
And dealer. Yeah, really operating only luxury hotels. They don't do anything else. They only operate in luxury. And today, both the families, one family's lost control. The other family has another shareholder which is in power.
AI acts like a black box, and anything that is a black box gives you the impression of distrust, and there is a fear of the unknown. What is this Gen AI thing, right? I don't understand it. If I don't understand it, then obviously I'm going to fear it.
कर देते हैं कि जो रोज़मर्रा की छोटी छोटी ज़िंदगी की हमारी खुशियां हैं उसको नज़रअंदाज करते हैं. आई एम हियर जस्ट फॉर अबाउट 15 मिनट्स. आई वोंट टेक मच टाइम बट आई एम हियर टू टेल यू दैट जो भी ये एक कम्युनिटी बनी थी गिव मी ट्रीज ट्रस्ट. दिस वाज इन 1977. आई वाज ओनली 11 years old. It
is high. There is a mission at stake which you're going ahead and doing for the nation. What is the definition of high performance over there?
It's just two words, mission accomplishment. You must understand one thing, that a high stakes mission or a high value target, if you draw a corollary towards the civil side, or you need to work hard for it and train relentlessly to be at the pinnacle of your thing. So failure might happen within fraction of seconds. So you train your body and mind to that level that you are able to adjust to that kind of thing. So everything boils down to whether you are in the special forces or whether you are in civil or whatever you're doing in life. If you're not able to deliver on that day, on that particular day, on that moment, then everything is null and void.
It actually tells you what the next step is, and then the tech just works. You don't even know about it. Does that make sense? But we all for 30 years have been focused on how do we put in tech and hope that people use it, and then all of a sudden people say, well, we can't drive adoption, or we're struggling with adoption. The reason we struggle with adoption is not because of tech. It's because of these other things, how we design. At work, has to have these 4 components. First, an aligned mindset. How do we think about change? Does that make sense? Like, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna throw a bunch of stuff out, and if I offend someone, I'm very sorry. If I go on a diet, management is actually putting on the dumb shoes. It's easy to put on the dumb shoes. It's hard to, like, the number of times I looked in the mirror, and they're not even tied. Like, it's a mess. But does that make sense? That's a mindset that we have to get through.
I was all set. But I think this moment was terrific significance. Thank you so much, Dr. Shashi Tharoor. I just realized that you're a man who needs no introduction. Your presence is enough. Let's give a Tech HR warm welcome. Resounding applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Dr. Tharoor, for gracing us one more time and being on the TechHR forum for People Matters. And it's always lovely to have you with us.
Thanks. It's great to be here. Great to be here. Thank you.
All right. Lovely.
Great to see you all. I think somebody reminded me the last time that we did this was in the Leela Hotel.
Yes.
And I said, I think you've outgrown this space because there were so many people standing and crowding. But it looks like you've outgrown this space too.
On leadership, what do you think India needs as we move forward? We're almost at the moment where East is the new West. We are growing, we have great ambition, we want to thrive, but that thriving needs leadership that can, sort of show the direction, paint the vision, execute, handhold. In your view, what's the leadership that India needs?
You already mentioned a few of the key ingredients. Obviously, it's got to be inspirational. You've got to keep 1.4 billion people inspired about your vision, about where you're trying to take the country. And I've got to admit, our PM does a pretty good job of that. But that's not enough. I think in addition to being inspirational, you need to be inclusive. You've got to make sure that everybody in the country feels they are stakeholders in your vision. And that means no one's got to be left out. Everyone's part of the adventure. And that's something that I think we need to see more of coming from our leadership. A third thing, it seems to me, is we also have to have a leadership that listens. It's wonderful to talk, to inspire, to advise, to guide, all the things you mentioned. But you also need to have a receptivity to feedback. You've got to be able to listen to what people are experiencing on the ground. And that applies to all sectors. Yes, we tend to think of the Aam Aadmi and the ordinary person who's supposed to be the beneficiary of all your ventures, but even other sectors in the business community. You think you've created ease of doing business? Talk to real business people and find out if they find life is easier. You think you've eliminated corruption? Talk to people who are dealing with customs, dealing with the tax collectors, dealing with the IRS. Get feedback. I think constant feedback is very often an indispensable part of leadership. So inspire, include, and listen would be my 3 catechisms for the leaders of tomorrow.
Wow, lovely. And in our organizations, I think listening is so important to what our people do, what our employees do, and make them stakeholders. But do you think it also puts us at a little disadvantage, because when you're executing something, when you're planning for something, and getting all the voices in also slows you down?
Can't be helped. I'll tell you why. Because in many ways, the best kind of leader is not the one who's feared, not even the one who's admired, not even the one who's liked. The best kind of leader is the fellow or the woman who at the end of a project, everybody else feels we did it ourselves. That is, they have felt it's their achievement as much as the leader's achievement. That is the best kind of leader, because to my mind, if I am just getting all the credit myself, why would anybody want to work with me? Why would anyone want to even assist my success if all the glory just comes to me? I want them to feel the glory is theirs too. And that's the way to lead, in my view. That's what I've tried to do in whatever little opportunities I've had to lead.
Lovely, lovely. I think the Indian cricket team is a great example. In the recent past, we've seen different kinds of leaders that are evolving. Any word on that, on how do you see it?
Yeah, well, I'm what the Australians call a cricket tragic. So I've followed the sport since I was a great passion. And I will say to you, there's absolutely no doubt that the cricket team is a very good advertisement for how the same set of individuals trying to parlay the same set of skills with ideally the same kind of results, like Ganguly, who just shows his passion, flipping, tearing off his shirt at the moment of a great victory. You've got someone like Kohli, who's personally engaged in every moment of the team that he leads, who's running around every corner, taking every catch, exhorting every bowler, clapping his hands after every ball, just so completely, totally engaged. There's no doubt that he is the animating spirit of the team. Cool, relaxed, unflappable. No crisis seems to bother him. No triumph seems to make him exhilarated. Unchanging, smiling, calm. Different kind of leadership. You've got a Rohit Sharma, who occasionally bursts into animation, but most of the time seems absolutely sort of inert on the field, but is actually shrewdly marshalling his resources very effectively. Now we've got Gill. We're still trying to figure out what kind of leader he is, because there are moments when he seems to be completely switched off, and the rest of us watching are sort of cursing and advising him on TV. But there are also times when he gets very effective outcomes. So we'll have to yet see what kind of leader he turns out to be in the next few years. But all of these styles of leadership are ways in which a leader can engage with his or her team. But I personally have a soft corner for a leader we hardly ever had much of, and that's Ajinkya Rahane. When Rahane led our team,
The Gaba.
When he led our team in Australia after Kohli went back for the birth of his child, and so he captained, I think, in 4 of the 5 tests, there was something incredible about his effectiveness. Totally soft-spoken, unobtrusive, not pushing anybody around, but it was very clear who was in charge, who was taking the calls, who was taking the tough risks, who was putting himself forward in the tougher moments, and who at the end of the series, when we won that trophy, refused to take it himself. He called the youngest, most junior member of the team to come and collect the trophy. That's a leader.
Lovely, lovely. So, if I was to now draw parallels for that into politics as well, and there are different styles of leadership, each has its own advantage. How do you see?
Unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because I'm more of a Democrat perhaps, but I think we always seem to have this larger-than-life leader figure to look up to. It doesn't matter whether it's an Indira Gandhi or a Narendra Modi. It is always the leader with a capital L that people in their own party and in the nation are. I mean, you remember D.K. Barua's famous line about Indira is India and India is Indira. You can't imagine any other democratic country saying that about their leader. But the same was true at the state level. You know, in Tamil Nadu, when Jayalalitha was ruling, it was all about her. Her own legislators and ministers would crawl on bended knee to her. When it was, even today in Bengal, it's all about Mamta. In UP, right now, it's all about Yogi. And so it goes. I mean, there is a tradition in our country of leadership as kind of the outsized figure whom everyone is supposed to admire and look up to. And I think I can understand that. If you want to really look at it like an academic or a scholar, you can say, well, in a large, vast population base, where you've got to have some common feature to appeal to, then it is much easier to have a personality to point to, rather than any other feature. And certainly in the old days when our communications were much more limited, when information was much more sparse, far easier to sell a figure, an individual, than sell a party or a platform or a program or a set of ideas or even an issue. It was also encouraged that in today's 21st century leadership, that we might begin to welcome more of a change. I'd like to think that a leader who is more collegial, who is less demanding of personal adulation, who is a little more open to collaborative work with a team. If you have to give an example, both Manmohan Singh and Vajpayee, who succeeded each other, were better examples of that kind of leadership. But the sad thing is, it wasn't easy for either of them to get that kind of passionate following that would have ensured their re-election, right? So Vajpayee was re-elected after that one-year term, but then lost after his second term. Same with Manmohan Singh, he won after his first term and then lost after his second term. And in many ways, it seems as if the Indian voter still demands the sort of
turn Dr. Tharoor from leadership into the whole aspect of India.
I've been conscious of this problem ever since I had a brief stint as Education Minister back in the UPA 2 government. But it was only a year and a bit. It was the last year and a bit of the UPA government, so we couldn't get very much done. But I did identify this problem and make a number of speeches about the importance of skilling, simply because it became clearly apparent to me that we had two crises that we were not facing adequately. One was, in those days, I mean, it's been, I think, now overcome, but in those days, severe crisis of growing Naxalism, particularly in the tribal areas, where Maoists were picking up guns, throwing bombs, attacking police stations, attacking convoys. And there was this, at that point, if I remember correctly, there had been violent Naxalite incidents in 125 of our then 625 districts. And I said, why is this happening? Because these young people are prey to the blandishments of anyone with 1,000 rupees and a Kalashnikov, because they have no stake in our economy. We're talking about India, branding India as the world's fastest growing free market democracy and so on, but they feel they haven't been given the tools to participate in that democracy, in that growth. And so I said, we need to skill these people. We need to give them opportunities to develop a stake in India, then they won't want to blow it up. So that was one major crisis. The second crisis was the fact that there were so many opportunities coming into India at that point. I'm talking about the beginning of the second decade of the century. There were so many new sunrise industries. AI was still just a gleam in people's eyes, but people were talking about it. There was a lot of new fields coming into play. But we were unready. We had a small, at that point, I discovered that in the entire IT revolution, from the early 1990s till about 2010, 2011, the entire IT revolution had only employed 5 million people. And these are all qualified engineers, software geeks, and so on. What about the rest? Every year, 10 million people were joining the workforce, and we didn't have jobs for them. So what I said, I made a speech, I remember, urging that every company of a certain size should be mandated, if necessary by law, to create a skill development center attached to their company. Train rural youth, train relatively uneducated people, train high school dropouts. They could then, if they trained the best ones well, they could take the cream of the crop, but the rest should be able to leave with a diploma that could then be transferable into finding a job elsewhere. Do you know that as recently as 5 years ago, I haven't seen a more recent number, in a country as large as ours, we had a nationwide shortage of qualified masons and plumbers? It's a shocking thing. Every mason in this country with a certificate or a diploma was sitting in the Gulf building buildings for the rich Arabs. Not for us. Why? Why is it that the plumbers who come and fix our sort of leaky toilets or whatever are people who have learned on the job? No one's ever trained them. They haven't got any skills. We also suffer from a cultural, societal problem, I'll be very honest, which is that for 3,000 years, if you wanted to acquire a skill, you better be born into a family that had that skill. You want to be a potter, a cobbler, a carpenter, whatever, you better have a father or an uncle who's one of those things and they will train you. But nobody else was there to teach you. Why should that be? That's a ridiculously inefficient way of skilling your population. We've got to create more institutions, and the government has to certainly do its part, including tax breaks and some money and setting up government centers. We've got to have The corporate sector, as I say, I'll be very thrilled to see a law that obliges every company of X number, let's say more than 500 employees, will have to set up a skill development center to train people. I'd love to see individuals also saying, I want to be trained, I want to be skilled, I want to go out and take this opportunity that is now being created in my neighborhood, or not even my neighborhood. And Swift is supposed to be the American-made gold standard for the world for money transfers. So we're suddenly demonstrating a capacity to be advanced in a field that affects the daily lives of people anywhere in the world. Now that's the way we can suddenly, one day I would like to see people around the world being as familiar with the notion of UPI as they're familiar with Coca-Cola or Starbucks. That's the whole idea of a brand coming up forward. Now, as far as India is concerned, we've got very many things going for us. It's genuinely true that there isn't a small town in America without a yoga class somewhere. It's also true that you can go to relatively obscure capitals in Latin America and get excited inquiries about Ayurveda. I went to Bogota, and the then president said to me, when can you guys send some Ayurvedic experts here? We've all heard about this. We want to see Ayurveda in Bogota. So there are all these traditional things too about India which people value. Don't get me wrong, it's not only 21st century tech. But if India can come across as a country that does all of this, both the traditional stuff, some of the glamorous stuff, the fashion, the Bollywood, the music even, Ricky Cage winning Grammys is not a bad thing for us to be boasting about. All of this, and then end up with also the entire 21st century tech stuff, the space stuff, private sector, young people getting into rocketry and advanced space exploration. All of this can collectively contribute to the shaping of a different brand India. We're not yet there, but I can see the glimmerings of all of this coming into a brand India. And that would make a huge difference. I was shocked, frankly, when I think it was the World Economic Forum, put out a list of the top 50 country brands in the world, and India wasn't on it. And I challenged, because in fact my friend Joseph Nye, the inventor of the notion of soft power, was on the committee that approved this. I said, why wasn't India on it? And he didn't have a very good answer to my mind. I said, look, I'm going to use your concepts of soft power and try and develop the idea of Indian soft power. And he gave me his blessing, and I sent him my first musings on the subject, and he blessed them. And thereafter I kind of went on a crusade in India. This is now 20 years ago, trying to get the notion of soft power into the Indian public consciousness. It's there now, and everybody talks about India's soft power. At the same time, soft power isn't enough, okay? For any country to go forward, we need some hard power too, because hard power without soft power is just bullying, but soft power without hard power is actually an admission of weakness. You need both. You need what Hillary Clinton calls smart power. And that, I think, is something we can do, but to do it, we have to get our act together across the board. We've got to defeat poverty, we've got to get those drains unclogged and the clean water, drinking water, and the sanitation problems, and the clinics actually having nurses and medicines in them. We've just got to make sure that the basics are right, that no one goes hungry in India, that everybody has a roof over their heads, that next stage is then that everybody has the skills to try and aspire to a decent job and to dream of a better life for their children. That there are schools everywhere of sufficient quality that they want to educate their children and bring them up. So there's a whole set of tasks across the board that are basic. What you might call the software of development, not just the hardware, not just the highways, the ports, the airports, the Yashobhoomi convention centers. These things we're getting right. But this alone, without that, ain't enough. So let's try and attend to both the simple basics as well as the big ticket hardware, high-tech ambitions. If we can do them both together, we'll have a brand that will steal and seize the world.
Wow. I think that's a great aspiration.